Thanks for joining us tonight for the Minot Area Chamber EDC Government Affairs Committee Candidate Forum for the Minot Park District Board. This is the first of hopefully 4 candidate forums ahead of the June 2022 primary. My name is Mark Lyman. I am the Economic Development Specialist for the Minot Chamber EDC and a member of the Government Affairs Committee. Along with Tom Rafferty, a Chamber EDC volunteer, we will be the moderators for our upcoming candidate forums. And thank you to those of us on YouTube and on Facebook for watching the forum, and on Channel 19 here in town. If you're watching live online and would like to propose a question to be asked of the candidates tonight, please feel free to drop that question in the chat or comment section of the Facebook page or the YouTube page you might be viewing. We will take those suggestions and ask them if possible. We are scheduled to go until 7:30 tonight, but may be done early depending on the brevity of the responses and the amount of input from the public. So again, a thank you to all who are participating tonight. We do have 5 candidates for 3 open seats. 2 are challengers, 3 are incumbents. And right now we'd like to get to meet the candidates. We're going to start with Mike Schmitt. And then we'll just go around the table from there. So Mike, if you could take a minute, tell us who you are, tell us why you're running for the Minot Park Board.
All right, yeah, thanks for having us tonight. Mike Schmitt, as you said, lived my whole life here in Minot, 37 years. This month, federal investigator with the U.S. government, married with wife Beth, who works for my public school district, and have 4 grandchildren, 2 living in Minot here and 2 living in Minneapolis. And was on the Park District, ran 4 years ago because I wanted to continue the good work that the Minot Rec Park District has done, and trying to get reelected again because I'm looking at some projects that I'd like to see fulfilled throughout the next 4 years, and that was one of the main reasons that I'd like to see those projects done that I think are going to be beneficial to the city of Minot.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Let's move to our second candidate, Justin Hammer. If you tell us a little bit about yourself, Justin.
Perfect, thank you. My name is Justin Hammer. I'm a North Dakota kid. I grew up in Williston, North Dakota, went to school at UND in Grand Forks, and moved to Minot almost 20 years ago. Been an active user of a lot of the facilities and parks of the Minot Park District. Married, have 2 children. My daughter's a junior in high school at Minot High. She's been pretty active in sports, and which allowed me to be at a lot of facilities as well. My wife is actually, hopefully she's listening, she's a doctor. She got a doctorate degree here about a year ago, so I'm pretty proud of her in nursing. And running for park board because I just want to be more involved. It's something that I have an interest in, I like in, and want to be part of the process. And I'm kind of at the point in my life where I have the time to devote to it. So I ran 2 years ago and was unfortunately not elected. So I'm back at it again to see if I can get elected.
Okay, thank you, Justin. Thanks for throwing your hat in the ring. Let's go to Chuck Emery. Tell us about yourself, Chuck.
My name is Chuck Emery. I've been a resident of the Minot area since 1974. Spent 28 years in the Air Force, retired there. Was hired by the Park District as the first general manager of Mesa Arena, job I held for 14 years until I retired from that job. Was elected to the Park Board in 2014. I think some of the accomplishments we've done as a board in the last 8 years, whether it's the Mesa Arena expansion, lion and tiger exhibits, completed flood control recovery with weed links, and the rec and park combination are some of our great accomplishments we've done. And with the projects we have in work, the family recreation area, the leopard exhibit, the Discovery Center, the remodel of the auditorium, and the Mesa Arena property, these are projects I want to be continuing to be involved in. And I think we've done a good job of upgrading things, making things better with a very, very minimal tax increase to the citizens of Minot, and I think we can continue to do that.
Okay, thank you, Chuck. Why don't we move on to our fourth candidate, Perry Olson, please.
Yeah, thanks, Mark, and thanks for having us all tonight to the Chamber EDC. My name is Perry Olson. Lived in Minot since my parents brought me here when I was 5 years old, and now married with 3 kids, and running for re-election. Got elected 4 years ago to the Park District, and it's been an absolute blast. It's been a joy to see projects start and finish. And I think the best part of being a part of the Park District is pretty much everything we do is quality of life stuff. I mean, we want to do things that bring quality of life to the citizens and the visitors of Minot. And I think we've done a good job of that over the last 4 years, and be excited to continue on for another 4 years if elected to do so. When I'm not doing park stuff, and I work at Community Bank, First International Bank and Trust. Been there for about 8 years now. So thanks again for having us.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Perry. And our last candidate, Logan, tell us about yourself. Introduce yourself, please.
All right, thank you, Mark. Thank you again to the Chamber for putting on this, and thank you to my opponents for coming as well. My name is Logan Longtin. I, much like Mr. Hammer, I grew up in Williston, left to go to UND, and then moved to Minot. I currently work as an English teacher for at-risk youth at the Dakota Boys and Girls Ranch. It's really fulfilling, really great job. I decided to run for the Park Board because I care a lot about Minot's parks and public spaces. I want to ensure our parks meet all the needs of all Minot residents. I believe that a community's health can be reflected in the health of its parks and public spaces, so I want to make sure that they're the healthiest they can be. I see a lot of opportunities for development of a lot of different spaces. I consider it's part of my priorities to expand Minot's bike path system to make it Minot a much more pedestrian-friendly city. I'd like to see the Greenway be more developed, see that be more of an asset for the community. I'd like to see our parks and trails be kept more clean by supporting Minot's recycling program. And I also like to see public Wi-Fi be installed in some areas of our city parks to improve Wi-Fi accessibility and improve the usefulness of our public spaces. So those are some of my priorities, and I look forward to more discussion.
Excellent. Thank you, Logan. Well, that kind of is a nice segue into the first question I'd like to ask. We have asked each of the candidates if they would take a minute or less to answer these, so we will make sure they try and stick to that. Our first question, and we'll go to Justin, and then we'll go back around, and Mike, you'll be the fifth one to answer. But Justin, if you could start us off on this first question, what are your highest priorities? If you were to be elected, what would be your highest priorities for the next 4 years for the Park Board?
Sure, great question. There's a couple things that I will focus on, but I think the main one is with right now there's been a lot of public forums about Mesa Arena and the auditorium, about remodeling and additions to those facilities. I think one of my areas that I'd like to focus on is getting user groups, not necessarily more active, but the Park District has done a great job with the user groups, getting input from them. And I think we're at the point now where the user groups have to be held a little bit more accountable on the using of those facilities and using them for more broader events and bringing people to the community versus our residents going to other communities for those activities. And I think about all the facilities and the activities we can have from Mesa Arena to the auditorium, if those were to be expanded from basketball tournaments to hockey tournaments. And I think those user groups are doing a good job, but I think they need to be held to the fire a little bit more and bring more economic development to the community.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Justin. Charles, Chuck, go next.
I think the top priority I have is that developing our family recreation area west of town. We got that land a little over 5 years ago. We have plans for making a great area down on the lower part of it to have a picnic shelters, walking trails, hiking trails, all kinds of things that will interest not only our citizens but from people from outside of town and make it a destination area. There's a lot of work to be done on trying to get grants and get support from the state, but that's probably my top thing. And the Mesa Arena property, developing that, as well as the remodel at the auditorium to get those things moved up and hopefully done within the next 4 to 5 years.
Okay, thank you, Chuck. Perry, would you answer it as well? What are your highest priorities for the next 4 years?
I want to continue to build on what I think has been the best thing that we've done the last 4 years, and that was the combination of the Parks and Rec. Minot was one of the very few communities in the entire country, really, that did not have Parks and Rec together. I mean, there was a show about it on NBC for years, right? And bringing those together, I think, created, a a system that made a lot more sense, allowed us to offer more to the community and to the citizens, and we need to keep building upon that, getting more people using, our facilities and our programs, and staff has done a good job with that. So we've got to continue to build on that. I agree with Chuck. The area west of town started last year with some construction. They'll be ready to go here hopefully this year for parking and getting people out there on those walking paths, and the continuation of all the paths throughout the community. We need to just keep building on those. I think it's the thing I've heard the most over the last 4 years is how much people just like on a nice day to go out and walk. And it's something as simple as that brings that quality of life. And if we can continue to do that, we'll be in a good spot. And just overall upkeep, the pool needs work. We've got to get that done. We've got the new slide in there in the last couple of years, or 2 years. This will be the second year, I guess, which has been popular, but there's more work that needs doing there. And then just planning for the future, especially with the zoo and that area, with flood protection coming through there, in the next decade. We want to make sure that we do things right so that Roosevelt Park is still a place that people can go and enjoy moving forward.
Okay, thank you, Perry. Logan, you're next.
Well, I already kind of went through a lot of my highest priorities in my introduction. Like I said, I'd like to see the bike path system be expanded. I'd like to see like an east-west corridor across Minot to, make it more pedestrian-friendly and more traversable. I think there's a lot of opportunities, especially with developing the Greenway, that we could make that a possibility. Again, I said public Wi-Fi, installed in some areas of city parks. A lot of cities now have pursued initiatives like that. Like I think East Grand Forks and Fargo have started looking into programs like that. I think that'd be very good for, again, making our public spaces more useful and also more of an enticing place for people to spend their time. I also want to keep parks and trails clean and support the potential recycling program that the Minot City Council is currently pursuing. I think that'd be good at reducing waste and keeping the Parks Department environmentally responsible. Another important thing is indoor recreation facilities. Of course, Minot is in a very cold climate, so for most of the year. So having those options available for people to spend the winter months not just locked up inside, I think is very important too, and something I want to pursue as a member of the Park Board.
Okay, thank you, Logan. Mike, would you finish us off, please, on this question? What are your highest priorities for the next 4 years, if you were elected?
One of the priorities I would like to get finished, and even if I'm not reelected, I'm going to try to see it finished, is we have a piece of property behind Mesa, which is the old Superfund site. And we're this close to finishing that, and it's being held up by government entities. We've had a good relationship with the city of Minot, working on trying to get that work done out there, and that's a very low cost but high impact to our community. If we can get the go-ahead to go work on there, we already have the golf disc lined up. We have the cages, baskets bought for them. We have the biking group ready to go. We have the running group ready to go. And it'll be just a great gym right in the middle of the city of Minot at a very low cost. So I'd like to see that one to get done as quickly as possible. The other one I'd like to see is the complex out at Mesa with the field house, because I think, as we talked, is that winters are long up here. A field house would be a great thing to have. And it's not a sports specific entity. It helps everybody in our community. People to bring their kids there to run around during the day, walkers, people just to get out of the house just to, in the wintertime, to enjoy some space, so to speak. And I want to continue on with our zoo, everything else that we have built on in the past. And basically, though, I want to make sure that we can do these things at very low impact to our taxpayers in Minot.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, gentlemen, for those first answers to the first question. We do have a question in from a viewer who would like to ask, and we'll start with Chuck. I believe you get to start this one off for us. So, Chuck, has the Park Board considered updating all facilities on a rotational basis? And I would add to that, how could this be accomplished if we were to do this? Has the Park Board considered updating all facilities on a rotational basis instead of waiting maybe for something to deteriorate or reach an end of its lifespan? And how could we do this if we wanted to?
Excuse me. I think that we are kind of trying to do that with the remodel we have at the auditorium, the expansion and remodel at Mesa Arena. Mesa Arena is 22 years old, which in the realm of things isn't that old, but it's needs some upgrades. So we are looking at those facilities. We've done that at the zoo. as far as, you look what we've done at Corbett Field, we've made that into a turf field. So I think that we have tried to do it. Is there more we can do? Yes, sometimes we may not see the need there. That's where sometimes with the input from the community, the example I use is, I thought the soccer complex was nothing wrong with the soccer complex, so I went up there and saw all the little deck rats there with the holes all over the place. It was something that if it's not brought to our attention, we may not even know that it's an issue. So some of those things for upgrades, we need to know what the users are having issues with. But we do have a plan, and we are in the process of doing it, and we kind of step through because it is an expensive thing to do.
Okay, thank you, Chuck. Same question, Perry. Has the park board ever considered updating all the facilities on a rotational basis? And how could we get this done if we're not maybe moving as fast as others would like?
Yeah, we do have a 5-year plan that we've kind of worked with, and I think, part of that 5-year plan would be new stuff to the community, and part of the 5-year plan are upgrading, things that needed doing. We've done a lot of paving the last few years at Roosevelt, the park, the zoo, the parking lot. The actual zoo paving itself got done and actually finished one year. It had to be finished that next spring, but we got that done. I think I've learned that projects get done with the park district when the user groups kind of partner with us. I mean, it's happening at the Shields complex at South Hill right now with the fast pitch softball program, which is just taken off like crazy in Minot. And, that group came to the park district, said, we want to try and, build something here, some infrastructure. We said, okay, you need to kind of bring some money to the table. They did a capital campaign and were spectacularly successful with it. And now, a meeting or two ago, we green lighted it. And if you drive by there right now, you see the work being done. So it's kind of a combination. There is that plan there, but when the user groups come to the park district with a plan and can implement that plan, I mean, those things can get done very quickly. And that's how some of the best things the last 4 years have gotten accomplished, I feel.
Okay, thank you, Perry. Same question, Logan. You're not currently on the board. You're a challenger. Would you do things differently? How is the park board, or how would you consider updating all facilities on a rotational basis?
Well, like you said, I'm not currently on the park board, so I can't really speak to the park board's current practices. But I know how terrible the issue of deferred maintenance can be to a lot of organizations, not just the Parks and Rec department. So I definitely like to look into how can the Parks Department be more efficient at ensuring that our facilities stay up to date and are adequately maintained. I think an important part of that is just simply listening to constituents. Like Mr. Emery said, all of us, we're just one person individually. We can't really know what's going on all the time with all our facilities. I know when I was collecting signatures to be on the ballot, I heard from some people that they wanted to see Corbett Field, the grandstand, be updated to be more disability accessible. And that's a thing that I like to consider if I'm elected to the park board in the future. So I would like to look into how can we be more efficient about not putting off maintenance for too long. But that's something I'd have to explore more once I actually get to the board if I'm elected.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Logan. Mike, let's go to you next. How would you answer that same question?
Well, I'm going to kind of reiterate what's been said up here is that, I think the park and rec, we do have a plan for future renovations and maintenance on our facilities. Sometimes those things do get overlooked by user groups that maybe don't come to us in quick enough time, and they have a dilapidated venue that they're using, and again, if it's brought to our attention, I think that we have to get on that right away and try to fix those problems. But just as the other individuals have said up here, is that if they do come to us and we can work together, that's how things are getting done in the park district right now, is through user groups working together. If you look at the pickleball is getting very big, and we were approached by the group, and now I went out Sunday to look at our new pickleball courts, and I can't think of the name of that park. It's the hidden one over by Oak Park there.
Riverside?
Riverside.
Is it Riverside? Riverside Park, that little tiny one, that if you don't know where it's at, you won't find it. But it was full of people playing pickleball. It was packed there that night. So, and again, now it's going to be the job of us to maintain that, make sure the nets are good every year, make sure that the pavement is good every year, just like Hammond Park for the tennis. That was starting to get used up. Again, continuing on and fixing our items before they become a major cost. So we're gonna have to keep on looking at that. But again, as we said before, I said before, things cost money, and we have to make sure that we budget properly for that and make sure it's not an impact on our users on those projects.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Justin, finish us off on this question.
Okay, sure. I'm kind of in the same boat as Logan. I'm not on the park district, so I'm not involved that much at all, I guess, with any planning or that. But I think the park district has been doing lots of updating, whether it's on a rotating basis or not. That's I guess I don't have that information, but Perry brought up the South Hill softball complex that's being, that turf is what, five years old, somewhere in there, which has been a great asset to the community. You look at the Magic City, the Fashbit softball group that how much they've grown over the years, and that facility now turns into an economic impact driver where they can have tournaments, they can have MSU softball playing there. So with those concessions and locker rooms, that addition is going to be a very nice addition to that. And Chuck mentioned the zoo earlier. The zoo is, I'm not a big, I don't go to a lot of other zoos other than Minot Zoo, but I don't know of another zoo in the area that's even holds a hand to the Minot Zoo. So I've been to Bismarck, I've been to Wahpeton, I've been to Lowe's Zoos, I've been to Fargo Zoo, but I guess I've been to the zoo in Honolulu. So I guess that's my zoo experience. But the zoo here is something that that's a quality of life aspect. It's also an economic impact to the city. I have a cousin who lives in Flasher, North Dakota, which is southwest of Mandan. She has 6 kids. She comes to Minot every year for a day to take her kids to the zoo. And that's about a 2.5, 3-hour drive. So she drives right by the Bismarck Zoo to come to the Minot Zoo. So, and then the plan with Mesa and, the planning of Mesa, the expansion and of the auditorium, I think are great things that the park district's doing. I went to one of the public forums for those facilities, and I think there was a ton of public input that came back on those, and I think those type of things, that's where my first statement was getting the user groups more involved and giving them more ownership and giving them a voice will definitely help with all the anything that needs maintenance on it. They'll be coming and letting the park district know about it. So.
Okay, thank you, Justin. The answer many of you have given already. Many of you have touched on our next one. We'll start this one with Perry. I'd like to just do 30 seconds on this question, so a little bit faster on this one. The Minot Park District is on the tail end of an indoor recreation facilities master plan. I think it took just over a year to pull that together. I was talking to Ron Merritt today, and he said that it should be coming before the board at the next meeting, possibly. So looking at that indoor recreation facilities master plan, quick 30 seconds, what are your highest priorities when it comes to improvement or changes within indoor rec options within Minot? Look for your top 2 and tell me quickly what they are and why those are your top 2. So Perry, we'll start with you.
30 seconds.
Yep.
All right. Indoor space, indoor turf, and more.
Typically at the Mesa, at the auditorium,
Yeah,
or just
well,
in general?
Both are proposed. I would say Mesa, the highest, would be number 1 for me because, I mean, we're looking at the prospect of a football-sized turf facility that's open 12 months out of the year. And when turf goes into one of the hockey rinks like it does at Mesa, it's there right now, I mean, it's booked up like that. I mean, people want to be inside, especially booked up when you get 3 feet of snow, right?
Yes.
So, getting that option there is going to be great. Now, if the community wants it, awesome. If they don't, well,
Yeah.
we work for the people. So that would be
That's number one.
I'm probably at 30 seconds. Number 2 would be basketball. More basketball courts. The AAU basketball starts, I think, at age 1 now. It's crazy. All these tournaments everywhere. And if we
Age
can,
1. I think it's actually 0, isn't it?
yeah,
Fair?
maybe
Age
0.
Okay.
If we can find a way to bring more people to Minot and fill hotels and fill restaurants and have kids playing basketball because they're doing it in other communities, that'd be great.
Okay, perfect. Logan, 30 seconds, if you can. Top 2 priorities for indoor recs. Top 2.
Well, I guess I'd have to say accessibility is number 1. I want to make sure that all of our facilities, again, are meeting the needs of all our residents and that they're easily accessible by everybody, whether they have a disability or some limitations such as that. And also, second one would be prioritizing activities for families and for senior citizens. I feel like those are kind of two groups who don't really get the attention they need. Making sure that children and senior citizens have activities they can go to in the winter to get out that energy and actually.
Any specific facility you would go after for families or for seniors?
Things like playgrounds, tracks, kind of that indoor turf space that Perry mentioned earlier, multi-purpose use space. Those would be my priorities.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Logan. Mike, you're next. Top two priorities for indoor rec options within Minot for improvements or changes.
Number one would be field house out at the Mesa complex, because that's going to be a big, as Perry said, a big football-sized area. And as I stated earlier, I just think it's for the community. It's not sports-specific. It can be used by everybody, young, elderly, to get out and use that space. So that'd be my number one priority. Second would be courts, and it wouldn't be just basketball. It'd just be court space at the auditorium, because you can use courts for basketball, as I said, pickleball, volleyball, other type of sports that you can bring into town. So I just think not a court specific for one sport, but just court area that bring in multiple sports at one time. That'd be my number two.
Number two. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Justin, top two when it comes to improvements or changes with indoor rec options within Minot.
I think my number one would be at the auditorium. I'd agree with Mike for court space. I see the need for, basketball tournaments, volleyball tournaments. You see a lot of people on Facebook. They're in Sioux Falls with their kid playing volleyball. They're Minneapolis playing basketball. So I think that auditorium would give a facility that we could really utilize to create economic impact. And my second would be, this is a tight one between the field house and the 4-sheet ice. And I think I'd go with 4-sheet ice, because I've heard, Prairie Grit's a big user group in Minot, and they need a facility to better suit their needs on the Prairie Grit on the sled hockey. I think there's some opportunity to really grow the sled hockey and options of Team USA, the coaches from Botno. There'd be some opportunity there to really grow that sled hockey and Prairie Grit.
Okay.
On that end.
Perfect. Thank you, Justin. Chuck, finish us off on this one.
Well, mine are going to kind of be right with my incumbents here. My number one is the indoor turf out in the Mesa complex. I think during the little bit of snow we had here recently, we discovered that our soccer players couldn't play soccer, baseball couldn't play baseball. This would have taken care of that problem, at least for the high school levels. How much you could squeeze in there at one time or with one turf area is questionable, but that would have been a big help with that, let alone what it provides for the whole winter time of people going in and just running around on fake grass. And then the additional basketball courts at the auditorium. Right now we have the main court, the big court. You have the Armory where you have one. Our plans to add 2 more, line for pickleball, set up to do volleyball, help all our youth programs. It would help the economic impact of, again, bringing teams in for more basketball tournaments for youth, more volleyball tournaments. So those are my number one.
Okay.
My top 2 things.
Okay, perfect. I hear a lot of Mesa and auditorium. So I bet those are going to be a hot topic over the next couple of years. Let's go to another question. Logan, you start us off on this one. What would you do in your role as a park board commissioner as it relates to upcoming green space opportunities along or near the Souris River that could be available for use by the public? What would you do in your role if you were park board commissioner?
Great question. That's one of my priorities and one of the big reasons I decided to run for park board in the first place. I lived in Grand Forks for a period of years. And of course, after they had the devastating flood of 1997, they made a really beautiful greenway area that's really a huge asset now to their community and really big draw to the community in many ways. Flood of 2011 happened 11 years ago now at this point. I think Minot residents are ready for probably something similar. Of course, I understand there's different limitations because, fundamentally different geography in different cities, but I think there's a lot more the park board could be doing to advance developing the greenway and having that green space be really all it could be. I think down by, I believe it's 3rd Avenue Northwest, like that kind of space between the river and the railroad, There could be more opportunities there for like parking to make it more accessible for residents to actually use. More development. There could be like benches and trash cans out there. Right now, it's just kind of a path. I'd really like to see that change. I'd really like to see that become a more useful public space that people can actually enjoy in the summer, and really connect it with the rest of the bike path system in Minot as well. So it integrates well with the rest of the park system too. So yeah, those are my priorities for that.
Perfect. Thank you, Logan. Mike, you're next. What would you do in your role as a park board commissioner as it relates to upcoming green space opportunities along the Souris River?
That's a topic of conversation a lot, is that the green space. And the green space, I would support expanding it wherever we can. We're limited sometimes to the flood process, what the city of Minot and the other entities are doing that they're going to allow us to do. But we, as a park district, have been back and forth with the city of Minot about if this green space is going to be converted to green space, we will maintain that, because somebody has to maintain the green space. That usually falls on us, and we have been 100% of the time said, yes, we will definitely maintain the green space, but it has to go through different governmental entities to make sure that we can get those certain spaces used for the public, and there's certain limitations on there. But I think our staff does a great job of working with the city of Minot to make sure that we can move forward to get that green space done, and we will maintain whatever is given to us. We will maintain it so we can have it for our community. We also have to look at different spots for green space. Individuals probably don't realize that we're looking at a space downstream, close to Logan, to do kayaking. That'd be a green space to bring kayaks in and out of, and actually have little park districts looking at spaces behind the VFW right now out there. So we are continuously looking at green space. It's just it's a fine line of making sure we get the go-ahead through certain entities to make sure we do that, but we will definitely maintain that, and I want to make sure that we maintain that green space as much as there is for the community.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Justin, you're next. Same question.
That's Mike brought up a lot of good points there's a lot of different government entities that are involved in that decision-making. A lot of that land does not belong to the park district at this time. It belongs to other entities, but, I think I would really push to challenge the staff to come up with ideas and plans and get community input on what can be done with those areas. I went to UND the year after the '97 flood, so I've seen what the flood did to the city, and then what the city's done since then with recreation along the river. So another good example would be Sioux Falls, South Dakota. They have it's the Big Sioux, or the Bois de Sioux River, I can't remember which river it is, runs right through the middle of town, and there's 30, 40 miles of bike path through there, and they've done a really great job with it. So I think, challenging the staff to work with the city and work with those government entities to get that, come up with ideas for those, and look to other cities for ideas of what they're doing, as well as getting community members, getting them involved with what they'd like to see and what the user groups are looking for.
Okay, great. Thank you. Chuck.
I agree with Justin that I think the primary thing is we'd like to come up with a plan, but the community input is what's going to be the most important part there, whether it's bike paths, hiking trails, picnic areas, whatever, and then making sure that we're well versed and everybody else's understands what the limitations are for what we can put in the green space and what we can't put in the green space, because actually the green space is the wet area. So we will have limitations as to what we can construct, what we can put in there, and part of it just takes time. I believe right now that the only real green space that can be talked about looking at doing anything is probably west of Broadway, because that's the only area that is considered completed. The flood control has to be completed before that green space will be looked at to be developed. So those are all things that we have to work on. It's something we've discussed, and as was brought up, we've already agreed that we'll maintain it. Cutting grass and take care of those things is the park district's area of expertise.
It is, yep.
But unfortunately, it's one of those things that means we'll probably buying some more mowers and getting some more employees, but the biggest thing is finding out what does the community want in those areas.
Okay, great. Thank you, Chuck. And to finish us, Perry, I think you finish us off. In your role as a park board commissioner, as it relates to upcoming green space, what would you do with this new available use?
Well, I don't think we have to reinvent the wheel. I think we can look to East Grand Forks and what they've done. I know, that and not just summer too, but winter opportunities. I know park staff have been to Winnipeg to see what type of things they do, and that community really embraces winter up there. We get plenty of winter here as well, so those green spaces are great for summer and spring activities, but they could also possibly be used for winter activities. When we do get nice winter days, people like to get outside. There was a day here this winter where the sled hill at Sears Valley Golf Course had like 400 people, I think, 300 or 400 people showed up. It was a Saturday. It was like, that one perfect day, right? And it was great. So if we can make those offerings there and then make sure people know about them. That's the one thing that you do hear sometimes, and I know it frustrates staff because the staff does a great job of letting people know what's going on and what's out there and what's available, but there are a lot of people who don't know. And when they do find out, they go, oh, wow, this is great. It's been here for a few years. So we want to make sure, and I think a goal for me as a commissioner, if elected again, would be to make sure that word is getting out, that people know about it and know all the opportunities, because in the next decade there will be plenty of green space. But I mean, it is pretty simple, I think. I mean, I'm at a point in my life where I spend a lot of time at the Hoven Baseball Complex with young kids playing baseball and coaching baseball, and I bet if you put a camera there right now, that trail is full of people. And it's simple, and it's not expensive, and people love it. And the more of that we can get in this community and get people outside, the better.
Okay, thank you, Perry. Thank you, gentlemen, for that answer. Take a quick moment. Anyone who's with us in person, if they want to, you're welcome to ask a question or raise your hand, and Carla will help you ask that question. Write it down for you. And then encouragement to anyone, again, online who's watching. If you're watching this live, please give us your questions. We will try and get them in the queue so that we can ask them here. We're about halfway done with the questions I've got, so gentlemen, we're moving right along. Let's start back up at the top with Mike for the next question. This one is if you were rubbing the genie's lamp, if you had a magic wand, you could have one big wish, or one big wish list item as an improvement to our community. From a Parks and Rec standpoint, what would that wish be and why? One big wish.
And it's paid for already?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that's the genie doesn't invoice you, does he? I mean,
Okay, that's
it's
true.
paid for, right?
That's true. If we could have it paid for, the one big wish would be a indoor aquatic recreation center.
Okay, and why?
It'd be because, again, I think it's been reiterated up here, we have very, very long winters up here. And look at aquatic center with recreation, like the lazy river, the water park, things of that nature, so that we have something to do for our kids and for our families in the wintertime up here. And also it can be utilized also in the summertime too, for birthday parties, things of that nature there. But aquatic centers are very expensive. They're very expensive to maintain, they're very expensive to build, but I think that'd be a very, very nice thing to have. If that was a wish I could get paid for, that'd be the wish that I would want.
Okay, you chose an expensive one. Okay, good idea. Justin, you're next. One big wish list item as an improvement to our community from a Parks and Rec standpoint, what would that wish be?
It's a tough question. When you first asked the question, and Mike started talking about an aquatic center or rec center, I kind of lean more towards, obviously the flood control needs to be completed before the green space can be, any green space things can be done like Chuck mentioned earlier, but I guess I would wave the magic wand and say have the flood control completed and all the recreational along the river and green space completed.
Okay, so you went a little outside the box. You finished the flood control, which isn't your responsibility, but I like how you tied in the green space to it. Okay, made it work. Thanks, Justin. Chuck, you're next.
If I had to rub the genie's lamp and get to everything, the projects that we have online,
One big project.
one big project.
One big improvement. What is it?
Can't do them all, huh?
Can't do them all. No, the genie's only giving you one project.
I guess I would look at the expansion to Mesa Arena because that affects so many user groups and so many people. You add the fourth rink. I've been involved in the ice program here in Minot for a long time, and it seems like we put up 2 rinks. We got to have a third, because the kids keep coming, the adults keep coming. Now we need a 4th. But we're also looking at curling out there. We're looking at the field house, which will impact If you're looking at user groups, soccer, baseball, lacrosse, let alone all the people that can come out to those areas just to enjoy being inside, a playground area out there, I would finish that area up and take that whole property, including the biking thing and on the Superfund
Frisbee
site,
golf, yeah.
get that entire
Finish
project
it all.
done.
Finish it all. Okay?
It all.
Okay, sounds good. Perry, you're next.
Yeah, what he said.
I'm going to say ditto to Chuck.
I mean, if that project is done all the way, we're talking indoor playground that's fully accessible with poured-in-place ground, not wood chips, right? You're talking curling, like Chuck said. We've talked to the wrestling group. I know they're interested in trying to do something, whether it's there or not. It's that next sheet of ice. It's the field house. It's the park's offices moving there as well. That's a part of the plan. I mean, that becomes, it's a change to the, if you haven't seen the
Huge
artist's
change.
rendition,
Yeah.
I mean, it's a beautiful facility. The outside gets a complete facelift. It becomes like the welcoming to Minot. Like you get the welcome sign, right, on the way into town, and then when you get past the view, and all of a sudden here's this huge facility that's welcoming you to Minot that has everything we can do almost in one spot. I think it would be awesome. It's expensive. That's why I'd take it for free.
Right. Right.
But yeah, for sure.
Okay, perfect. Logan, finish us off on this question.
Well, I'm going to sound pretty unoriginal at this point. I'd probably have to flip a coin. It'd be either.
Oh, no, you got to pick one. No, you got to pick one.
Well,
I'm
this is
making
after
everybody else pick one. Just pick one.
One's heads, one's tails. It'd either have to be an indoor recreational facility, equivalent to like the Arc in Williston, or the one they have in Dickinson, which are like very beautiful, like very functional indoor facilities. I really think Minot could benefit from something like that. Or kind of what Justin was saying, finishing the flood control, but specifically I'd like to see the dead loops on the river be reconnected to the main body of the Souris River to make it an actual like traversable waterway that people could enjoy through like kayaking or through winter skiing or something like that, which would go into the green space as well.
Okay. So indoor rec was the heads, and the flood was the tails.
Yes.
You flip your coin. Which one is it? I'm making you pick.
Probably have to be the indoor recreation facility.
Indoor rec. Okay. Thanks for going along with me, Logan. Let's look at the couple questions we got online. I'm going to kind of put both of these together. And I, again, encourage everyone to keep it under a minute. I know we could get a lot longer on these answers. So I'll put both of these questions together. Justin, you'll start us off on this one. So the question is about, is the current budget sustainable, or should we request more funding? And the second half of that question, I think, because they go together, what's an acceptable tax load by the Park District? Now, I think the Park District is right about 20 or 22% of the property taxes that a person pays goes to the Park District. I'm pretty sure on that number. I don't think it's above 25 and it's not below 15. I think it's in that high teens or low 20% of the property tax goes to the Park District. What is an acceptable tax load by the Park District, and is the current budget sustainable, or do you need to get more funding?
Well, I'm not being part of the park board right now. I haven't been involved with the budgeting process, but keeping taxes in line and sustainable for the residents is an important task for the park board to keep in line. The budget from looking from outside, looking in, they've done a lot of things, accomplished a lot of things with the money they have available to them. So my first gut tells me that it is sustainable. When I first, my first comments were talking about getting user groups involved they are involved, but I think that we need to get them more involved with these facilities. We talk about the Mesa expansion, and Perry started throwing curling and wrestling and hockey of the hockey boosters and figure skaters. Those groups are very important to the success of the Park District and those facilities. Maybe I'm a little biased because I try to play some hockey. That's how I'll put it. I can't get out of bed very good Monday mornings, but the hockey boosters is a user group that has really helped and partnered with the Park District to accomplish a lot of things. And I think the more of that you can do, help get those user groups to help with funding. You know, Perry mentioned the softball complex with the Magic City softball, the fast pitch organization saying, hey, we want to do this. And then they stepped up to the plate and helped fundraise. I think those user groups need to step up to the plate and help, and that will help sustain that budget. And we have to be careful. And you know, we talked about the Genie and being able to build a rec center, indoor facility. That's, you know, it'd be great, but we also have to maintain that facility, and those are not cheap things to do. So, you know, the Williston Arc is a great facility. I've seen it firsthand. My daughter played tennis. She went to Williston. It was 50-mile-an-hour winds. She couldn't play tennis outside. They moved to the Arc. The high school baseball team was in the turf area practicing baseball. If that facility wouldn't have been there, neither one of those things would have been going on that day. So there is an impact to the community on those things, but the cost of it needs to be kept in check.
Okay, thank you, Justin. Same question, Chuck, about what's the acceptable tax load by the Park District, and is the current budget sustainable?
The current budget is sustainable. I mean, one of the things that we have changed this past year is that we have approached our user groups, and we've actually are striving to set a percentage of our operation costs that they'll cover with user fees. It was something that we hadn't done across the board with all our user groups, and all the user groups are very receptive to it, which will increase the fees that they pay the Park District to use the facilities. I think it'll be sustainable for the future. I would like to explore the options of doing a additional 1 cent city sales tax to run the Park District. Right now, we run about $8 million in property tax revenue. If you had a 1 cent city sales tax, added that to the system, that would generate about $11 million, which would give us a cushion there to pay off our debts, maybe set up a foundation to help out outlying park districts, like whether it's Burlington or Surrey, make a foundation where we can give them some money to help them out. But it would also take, we talk about the economic impact that the Park District has on the community, and it is huge. I don't know what the numbers are at Mesa Arena right now, but when I ran it, we were looking at $3 to $4 million a year that Mesa Arena brought into the city of Minot. And the Park District gets $0 from sales tax. By having a sales tax as our funding agent, the people that come to use our facilities are helping to fund them. I know it to be a significant explanation where people understand that it would, in fact, in most cases, save people a significant amount of money. Because when you look at your property tax form, everything that's in there for the Park District would go away.
So Chuck, just so I understand, are you proposing that the 1 cent sales tax replaces a property tax?
Replace.
Not additional to the property tax?
We would.
Okay.
And that is something to find out. You know, we talked about it 7 years ago when we were going to do the rec center.
Mark, yep.
But it was tied with the rec center, and there was a lot of confusion on people that didn't fully understand how by adding a 1 cent city sales tax, how much money you'd have to spend to make up what you pay in the property tax.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Chuck. Perry, you get the same question.
Mm-hmm. I do think the current budget is sustainable. In the first 3 budget cycles, they did not move up, and it moved up a little bit here this last cycle. So I think that it can stay where it's at moving forward for the foreseeable future. A key to that, though, is working well with the user groups, the Minot Hockey Boosters, the softball group, Magic City Youth Baseball, whatever it may be, when projects want to be done, when they can come in with raised funds that helps make that budget sustainable. And I think the tax load is fine too, and as other public entities increase theirs, I mean, ours drops, right? I mean, Minot school system is going up with the vote that happened here a few months ago, but that percentage is not really going to change our dollar figure either. So I think overall the Parks and Rec do a really good job getting good bang for the buck for the taxpayer, put it that way. I think that's proven in the last 4 years, and beyond that, 8 years. So Chuck can talk about 8. I can talk about just these 4. That it, if you average that out, I mean, it's been a very, very small increase per year over those 4 years, and we've had a lot to show for it. We've got a lot of really cool things that are benefiting the community with not a whole lot of tax burden. So
Okay.
it can always be less, though.
It could be, yep, yep. Logan, the same questions for you. Is the current budget sustainable? Do you need more funding? And what is an acceptable tax load by the Park District?
Well, again, since I'm not currently on the board, I can't really speak too much to the details of all like the budget necessities. I would say as long as the park board is able to fulfill its duties, provide an adequate quality of life for the residents of Minot, it is operating within a sustainable budget. I'd like to point out that money spent on the park board usually comes back to the community like multiplied. So any money that goes towards the park board, towards developing our public spaces and facilities, is money very well spent by the taxpayer. So I obviously have my own proposals and ideas. Obviously, I would not want to, my first instinct is not to raise taxes. I would want to try to work creatively within the budget as best I can, or to find other funding solutions to those proposals. But I think there's probably also opportunities to find new ways to save costs. For example, there was a news article run pretty recently about how diesel costs are affecting the park board. I think maybe the park board could explore replacing some of those diesel-operated vehicles or tools with electric-operated tools. That would save money, a lot of money in the long run for fuel costs. So looking into initiatives like that, I think, to save money for the park board that could be better spent on facility development or maintenance, and not so much, contingent on commodity fluctuations. I think looking at alternatives like that are important when discussing the budget too.
Okay, thank you, Logan. And Mike, you finish us off on this question.
With our current budget being sustainable, yes, I think it is. Ron Merritt, our park director, is great at budgeting the money, make sure that the department heads are within that budget and stay there. And we get the quality of facilities that we do within that budget. As Perry said, my 4 years, 3 years, we saw no increase, with a slight increase this past year. The biggest thing to maintain that is, as we said up here, is the user groups. User groups, we have to be in constant contact with them. If we have to get something new or keep our facilities up, might have to raise some cost on them, but it's very little cost. If an individual, I think our softball program, my fast pitch was, I could be wrong, but I thought it was about $15 a person to play for a whole summer. That's pretty good bang for your buck, if you ask me, on that. So I think our budget is sustainable. Taxes, talked about a lot of big projects up here.
Yep.
A lot of big things that want to get done with the Parks and Rec in the city. So it's going to be basically, we have to ask community, what do you want, and how are we going to fund this? Do you want everything? Well, this is what's going to cost. Is it not, do you want to do a couple of things, and keep a little bit lower in the tax burden? We're going to have to think of some ways, but we're going to have to interact with the community on that, how we want to get those projects done, if that's what the community wants. And going back to what the Parks and Recs bring into the community, the study was done this past year. For every $1 tax money comes into the Park District, the return is $5.30. So that's a return of $5.30. So I think if we continue forward with this and we do put some facilities in with the help of our community, how we're going to fund that, it's only going to come back, reap its benefits with more returns for those projects that we're going to be doing.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Mike. Next question here, we're going to go to Chuck, will be the first one to lead us off. Workforce challenges seem to be present for all businesses, including government entities. What can be done to ensure that the good employees, both full-time and seasonal, are recruited and retained by the Minot Park Board?
Hiring employees is a very hard job to get done. Just like you're saying, that we're no different than any other place. We have help wanted signs out all the time. And the only way you keep people anymore is to pay them a little extra. You have to be a little bit more willing to be flexible in work hours. A lot of our workplaces are not an 8 to 4, 8 to 5 job. You look at the golf course, Mesa Arena. There, Mesa Arenas, they got kids on the ice at 5:30 in the morning, usually till about 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock at night. So it's not a normal work shift. And you be flexible what people want to work. You have to if you want to keep them. And you give them the benefits that they deserve, whether they're a full-time employee. You know, we do give a little bit less benefit to the part-time employees, but they do have some good benefits that go along with their wages. But over the past probably 10 years, you know, the wages in the Park District have gone up significantly, and they've had to. And we've absorbed that and kept the budget increase slow, and the taxes and paying for that haven't gone up much either.
Okay, thank you, Chuck. Perry, how would you answer that? What can be done to ensure that good employees stay with the Park District and want to work for the Park District?
Treat them well. I don't know what you do besides that. And I do think that the culture of the Park District and the recreation, which is now part of Parks, is great, led from the top with the executive director, Ron Merritt. He does a great job. I mean, you have to, no different than anything else, you have to go out and recruit and then retain the people you want to retain. Got to make sure you pay them well. You got to make sure they have good benefits, all that good stuff. But if it's a good culture, I think people will want to stick around. It's not an easy question to answer. If it was, everyone would have that answer. And there's a lot of business owners around North Dakota and the country that are probably asking the same question, right? But you know, I do think there's a strong work ethic in North Dakota. I think people want to do a good job. And I do know that we have good people right now in the Park District. Taxpayers can be happy with what they have. But that said, we're seeing some people retire, right? And we've been able to replace them with good people in a couple situations. We have a couple more that are open right now. We'll see what happens with that. But you have to be competitive.
Okay.
No doubt about it.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Logan, what are your thoughts on the matter? What can be done to make sure that good employees are recruited and retained?
Sorry. Well, I agree with pretty much almost everything that's been said already. I think as a matter of principle, it's important that, you know, people are paid what they're worth and people are, you know, compensated fairly for the work they do. Especially with inflation the way it is, going into the next year, it'd be important to ensure that our employees' wages, or the Park District's employees' wages, keep pace with inflation to make sure that they're still able to make ends meet and budget effectively. And that's not going to be super easy on the budget, I understand. But again, I think that's probably the top priority for the budget, is making sure that Park District employees are compensated fairly for the good work they do. Just as an outsider, again, I'm not super involved with like the details of the board at this point, unless I'm elected. But the Park District does seem to do a great job, and all the employees do seem to do a great job at maintaining the parks and doing the job they need to do. So I'd like to see that continue.
Okay, great. Mike, what are your thoughts on the matter? How do we keep those good employees? How do we keep recruiting good employees to the area?
Sure. I mean, you know, a lot of people will say money and, you know, they pay more, they're going to keep them, but that's not always true. I've seen a lot of businesses that pay very high wages are having the same problems everybody else is. And I think it comes down to quality of work, the environment you're in. We have to have a good, safe work environment for our employees, and they have to have fun here. And as Perry was saying, is working in Parks and Recs, you're working outside, you work in the zoo, animals, you work out in the golf courses. It's a fun activities. And I think our directors of our different departments have done a great job in maintaining that great attitude out there and treating our employees with respect. With that said, it also comes down to the park commissioners. We have to protect our employees. If we start hearing things that our employees are getting bashed for things they haven't done, we have to stick up for them. You know, and they're trying their hardest. And if they know that we have their back, I think that makes them feel comfortable. You know, we lost a very good zoo director, Becky, you know, when she left. And we actually replaced her with a great zoo director, Jeff. You know, it came from down south, took this position. So I think that says something that they do want to come up here. You know, a different environment, coming from the nice warm south up here to the winter, you know, and totally different zoo environment that Jeff has ever dealt with cold weather. And he's acclimated great, and, you know, we got a great person in that. So I think that says something for what we're doing up here, and that's, I would say, just keep on maintaining that, respecting the employees.
Okay, great. Justin, finish us off on this one.
Sure, that's a tough question. You know, I deal with it in my professional life too, of retaining employees and finding good employees and keeping them, and you know, I think it comes down to a lot of things. I think the culture is the biggest one, of providing a culture where it's enjoyable to go to work and they enjoy their job, as well as, you know, compensating them with with pay and benefits and those sort of things. But I think the culture comes down, and that starts with the park board commissioners making sure that the supervisors and the department heads in place are the right people to be leading those teams, and that they're the type of people that people want to work for. And, you know, it is, you think about the park district, it's, you know, the first thing that comes to mind when someone says park district to me is fun, because it's they're out coaching youth sports, they're working they're mowing grass, they're at the zoo, you know, and the zoo is a place where I went to the gender revealing a week or so ago, 2 weeks ago, whenever it was, of the tigers. And the zoo employees, they all look like they love their job. They're all having fun. They're all interacting with each other. So, you know, it's probably a place that they probably, you know, I don't know if this is for a fact, but I'm guessing they probably don't lose a lot of employees. They probably retain a lot of employees. They probably have a lot of some seasonal employees that come back because they enjoy working there. So I think it's the culture, and it starts with the top and works its way down.
Okay, great. Thank you, guys. I've got 2 more questions. We'll finish it off with these 2 questions, and then we'll give you guys each maybe 30 seconds for a final statement or 2. But the one question I'd like to ask deals with the recent vote for the second high school. And the second part of that question involved a new swimming complex, or a 50-meter pool. That's only part of maybe a bigger vision or a bigger dream for a aquatic center. What do you envision, we'll start with you, Perry, what do you envision the plans to be for a continued partnership with the Minot Public School System and those user groups you talked about, the aquatics and the swimming groups in town, especially as it relates to a new or improved indoor aquatic centers in our community? That was a big piece. Voters said, we'll give you an extra $10, $20 million to put that in. That's on top of the school. How do we take advantage of that? What are the next steps? How will we continue that? Perry.
Well, from the top, I think that the working relationship between the Park District and the schools with Dr. Vollmer have been great. There were, meetings before all of that there could be a possibility if the voters decided to put that pool in there, which they ultimately did. I know the plan is to design that so that you got the 50-meter pool, but it is going to be designed so that the recreation portion of it, if it's a lazy river, if it's that type of stuff that's more Parks and Rec oriented, can be added onto it. If it's 5 years down the road, if it's 10 years down the road, if it gets on a 5-year plan. So I think that the groundwork for being able to do something is extremely important, and that's being done, which is great. Thanks to that back and forth between the Park District and the school system. And I mean, I feel like everything comes down to what the constituents want. I mean, we can put out plans like we're going to do at Mesa, or like we're doing with the auditorium, like we'll be done with that new school on North Hill. And if the people want it, then it'll happen. If they don't, then it won't. But I think that we've kept that door open to increase the swimming opportunities up at that facility, which is smart because we don't need to duplicate. Right? Pools, as we found out the last few years looking into this, are very expensive to run. They're expensive to build, and they are very expensive to keep running. But it's been a good start for that. And I would anticipate that that communication will continue. I don't know why it would stop, and it's there if the people want it.
Okay, thank you, Perry. Yeah. Logan, what do you envision the plans to be for a continued partnership with the public schools and the private aquatics groups? How do we move forward? What are the next steps?
Well, again, I can't speak too much to the specifics of what's happened in the past, but I definitely do think the Park District and the schools do seem to have a very good working relationship. I think that's especially important when you talk about quality of life for a community. A lot of the two main things people consider when they think about quality of life, it's parks and schools. So I think it's very important that we keep that partnership intact and keep it working well. For the pool specifically, I was a swimmer in high school. I love swimming. I really want to get back into it, but unfortunately the lack of a public aquatic center in Minot is a bit of a limitation for that. So for me, it's very important to see a project like this go through. I would like to explore all possible options about how that can best serve the public, and how that also can be expanded, as Perry mentioned, to serve more recreational type activities, like a lazy river, maybe like a surfing kind of feature like they have in the Arc in Williston. Whatever that can possibly be done to make it the best aquatic center possible to boost the quality of life in the community.
Okay, thank you, Logan. Mike, you're next. Same question.
Yeah, I think the relationship we have for the public schools is great right now with the Park District. You know, kind of giving some back history to the pool up there is that, you know, as a Park District, we listened to the swimming group. What do you want? And they came out in full force to one of our meetings. Hundreds of people and kids show up that we need a new swimming pool. And they look at our swimming program. It's unbelievable. But look at the swimming pool they swim in at Minot High. It's still, you know, back in the 1970s. And so we knew that we needed to do something, but as we said up here, everybody said pools are expensive to build and maintain. And we got the ball rolling, what can we do? And then that's when the school system knew they wanted to do another bond for another high school. So we pretty much, you know, met with the swimmers, met with the high school, Park District, how can we get this done? And ended up being a swimming group and a school group, you know, getting the benefits of that. You know, it's going to be run by the high school, by the Minot Public Schools, that pool is. The voters decided to go for that $20 million extra to build the pool, which is great. That's what they seem fit. Our community wanted that. Now that we got that built, now we got the imprint of maybe building later on down the line a recreation facility onto that. As we said, lazy river, hydro pools for handicap, things of that nature. And that's something we have to continue to look forward to. And we're going to look at, you know, school district was definitely great on how we built that one aquatics, the swimming pool up there now, about having more space going to the south if we need it in the future. So the talks are there. Again, it's going to come down to community is what do we want and how much do we want to pay to get something of that nature if that's what we feel we need.
Okay. Thank you, Mike. Justin, what are your thoughts?
You know, I think everybody kind of echoed the same thing up here. I think, you know, I can't speak to the relationship between the city and the Park District, but I have no reason to believe it's not a good relationship. And, you know, for the bond issue to be passed is going to be a great thing for the city and for the swimming groups. When I ran for Park District 2 years ago, I had, you know, when you're going out getting those signatures, sometimes it's you kind of make the decision on whether you really want to do this or not, because you get a lot of people that won't sign your petition until you answer some of the questions, right? And I had a lot of people from the swimming groups that were wanting a pool. They need a pool, and so I think it's great. I'm really excited about the new high school and all those facilities that are going to go along with it. But, you know, I think the Park District can really offer up resources as far as you know, we already operate an outdoor pool, so we have those staff members that are probably a lot more expert than a lot of people in this town on, you know, how to build a better pool, what kind of things to stay away from, what kind of things that are must-haves, and, you know, if it's going to be able to be expanded, build it, you know, give input on how to build that correctly so it can be easily expanded. So I think the resources the Park District have would be more the staff and the expertise of the staff.
Okay. And Chuck, what do you envision? The same question. What do you envision to be the continued partnership? What does that look like as it relates to the aquatics in town?
I think the partnership between the school district and the Park District will continue to be very, very good. The addition that would be eventually to the aquatic center, to the pool, you know, we've talked lazy river, we talked different things that could be in there. A lot of that will come down to what does the community want? What do users want? And then you decide, okay, here's your dollar figure. Each thing that you want, how much it is, and then where does the money come from? Because when you start looking at the recreational side, a lazy river or anything like that, there's really not a user group. That's going to be strictly probably tax dollars. What does the community want to support? And it's a matter of just working it out. I mean, the relationship with the school is good. The land will be there. And hopefully we stay involved enough with them that it's designed so that it's not a problem to put an addition onto it.
Okay. Thank you, Chuck. We're going to do our last question for the night. Want this to be a 30-second answer for each of you. I think it's going to be pretty brief, hopefully. We'll see. Logan, you'll go first on this one. Are there any programming gaps for any age group in our community, especially from a rec services standpoint, that you would target for improvements or changes? Are there any programming gaps for any age group in our community, especially from a rec services standpoint, that you would target for improvements or changes? 30 seconds.
Well, I feel like I've said this a few times tonight. I can't speak to that too much since I'm not currently on the park board. But again, like speaking personally, aquatics programming, I think, in Minot could be improved. Of course, that has to do with the lack of facilities too. But I would like to see more done on that front to make aquatics and more things, more than just traditional ball sports, kind of be expanded upon and brought into the conversation as well. Like I believe Mike brought up pickleball. That is a great new opportunity, and I'd like to see exploring new opportunities like that for maybe more unconventional sports to be brought into the Park District fold.
Okay, great. Thank you. Mike, what are we missing? What do we need to add?
I think that the very younger group, that maybe 5 and under, 5 and over is playing T-ball, their activities. Again, it goes back to that field house. There's a place that individual families can bring their kids. Maybe, we tried the programming up at the Dome up there, bringing the play items out there and, activities for kids. So I'd have to say that if we get the facilities, we need to maybe target a little bit more on the younger kids that also involves their families to get them active, doing something other than just sitting around the house in the wintertime.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Justin, 30 seconds. What do you think? What are we missing? What gaps do we need to go after?
Sure. So I work in the apartment industry, and when COVID hit, we had so many more neighborhood disputes going on because people were home and kids are running across the floor, and I live on the first floor and kids live on the second floor. And so, I'd echo Mike with that. The field house at Mesa Arena would offer, the field house indoor playground area. In the wintertime, parents of young kids get them cooped up, and I don't have to necessarily listen to them, but I have employees that have to listen to the complaints from.
Sure.
And it really, we saw a huge influx when COVID hit, when people were stuck at home, not working, kids aren't going to school. So indoor recreation with that field house and playground would be, I think, would be a big area that would be heavily utilized.
Okay, great. Chuck.
I think if we're the gap to be filled, like Mike brought up, that under 5-year-old, where they have an area where they can go and just run off energy. But I also think with our senior citizens, when you look at what the rec provides, what the rec does, probably we're missing a little bit there. I mean, we have user groups, the pickleball, that's a lot of senior citizens, older people, but that's not a minor rec running that. That's a group running their own. And I think that's something maybe we could need to look at is what can we as a Minot Park and Recs do to keep seniors be active?
Okay, great. Thank you, Chuck. Perry, finish us off on this one.
I would say activities that are newer, that maybe weren't around a decade ago. I don't know if that's the right number, but definitely longer than that. Pickleball, which we've obviously talked about, there's a growing group that I think we could work more with, and if it's leagues and if it's getting youth involved in it. And pickleball is just going to lead to more tennis, which we have a lot of tennis facilities, which is great. Frisbee golf, frolfing, I think is something that's picking up that we need to make sure that we're on the front lines or second lines. We're probably already behind. However, we did make the purchase of some good high-end stuff for the area right around Mesa. I think there's like a I don't even know what it's called, like kickball golf type thing. Yeah. I think that we have the people in place at the Park District right now to start offering that stuff. And I know they look into it, and then it's getting that information to the people. We talked about how we have a good relationship with the school system. Well, the school system every year lets the Park District put out our magazine saying, here's everything that's offered over the next 3 or 4 months when you're not in school. So that's been a positive. And then finally, this is something I wish we would have had by now, is a better playground outdoor. And we have outdoor playgrounds, but I want a poured-in-place playground that is accessible with wheelchairs that way easier than trying to navigate on those stupid wood chips, which drive me nuts. There are better options out there, and I think that's a failure of the district, is that we have not done that because we're way behind on that.
Okay. Well, thank you, gentlemen. I'm going to take just 5 seconds and do a shameless plug. Many of you mentioned this already, but thank you for the support for the Magic City Discovery Center. The Park Board has been a great partner with that. And I know that's going to help a lot of those very young age groups. A lot of you mentioned the under 5 and families and young kids. So thank you for that support for the Children's Museum here in town. We want to take time now to give you each about 30 seconds to 45 seconds. And I'd like to just hear if you would like, tell us why voters should vote for you. So we're going to start back at the front. Mike, we'll start with you. Why should voters vote for you? Again, you've got challengers here. You've got only 3 seats and 5 of you going for it. So why check Mike?
To continue the work that I've done in the last 4 years, I think if you look around the city, you just mentioned it, the Children's Discovery Center that's being built and up on, you can't miss it in this town. When you drive around, you look at the South Hill Complex, the turf fields. You look up there now, we're starting the locker rooms, concession area, the press boxes. Facilities are getting done and they're being built, and we're making it better for the community here. And I'm going to continue to strive to do that. The biggest thing, like we said, is going to be what does the community want in the future with the auditorium out at the Mesa? Do they want the whole thing? How are we going to do that? And I guess what we're going to have to do is, as a board, decide if we want to move forward with that. And the next one is how do we do that? How do we make it a realization? And there's going to take a lot of community input. It's going to take a lot of talking with individuals. I think I've been in those talks, and I think I would like to move forward with those projects and see those completed.
Okay, great. Justin, what's your 30-second elevator speech? Why should people vote for Justin?
Sure. I'm excited. I'm energetic to become part of the Park Board. Hopefully, I can get elected, and if I am so elected, I'm gonna bring a lot of energy. I want to build relationships with user groups. I think there's a lot of relationships that are already great. I think there's other user groups out there that could really benefit from the Park District, and the Park District could be more of a facilitator to help those user groups grow in numbers. And those user groups in turn will turn around and help the Park District grow. So, this is my second run at it. So hopefully I can get elected, and if I am, I'm gonna bring some energy and some hard work, and hopefully have a positive impact.
Great. Thank you, Justin. Chuck, tell us your sales pitch.
Well, I think the record of what the board has done for 8 years has been fantastic. We've done so much without increasing the tax level on the Park District or on the citizens of Minot. I think for a vote for myself, 8 years experience on the Park Board, 14 years experience working for the Park District, I have a little bit of different perspective of knowing when it comes to budget, what that impact has on a department, as well as looking at it from the other side as a commissioner to make sure that the impact is not a negative impact on the citizens of Minot. So I have a little bit of a unique perspective on it. I've done it for 8 years on the board. I'd like to do another 4 years and see some of these beautiful projects that we've started and get to see them to getting done.
Okay, thank you, Chuck. Perry Olson, you're next.
Thanks, Mark. I guess I'd like to think that maybe my wife and kids would disagree, but a vote for me is a vote for common sense. And I think over the first 4 years, or the 4 years that I'm wrapping up, I think that I showed some common sense during my time there. The Parks and Rec should have been together decades ago in Minot. It was the first thing we did, was start those discussions, and it's together now. It makes complete sense. During COVID, there were parks across the country, including in North Dakota, that literally closed outdoor playgrounds. They had ribbons around them. Kids could not play. They were boarding up basketball hoops. We didn't do that. We stayed open. We gave the taxpayers the opportunity to get outside and play when a lot of people across the country could not do it. And we set records at a lot of our facilities that year because that's what people wanted to do. That was common sense. I think that, we've got plans put in place that I think make sense as well. We've talked about them tonight. But what it comes down to is I think voting for me is going to put those plans to the people's decision. And if they want them, we'll do it. If not, so be it. That's fine. But I think the job of a commissioner is to give people those choices. And I'll listen to what they say. And I would be honored to serve another 4 years.
Okay, thank you, Perry. Logan, you're the last one. Tell us why we should vote for you.
All Well, I believe as a young North Dakotan and as an educator for at-risk youth, I have a pretty unique perspective to bring to the board. This isn't a vanity project. I'm willing to listen to anyone, willing to work with anyone together to advance the best interests for the community of Minot. The Park District has done a very great job. I've heard a lot of great ideas mentioned here tonight that if I'm fortunate enough to be elected, I'd like to see advanced. But yeah, I see a lot of opportunities for development for our parks and public spaces to make Minot even more healthy, even more welcoming community. And I'd like to be a part of that process to see and make that happen. So thank you.
Okay, great. Well, thank you again, gentlemen, for taking the time tonight. We really appreciate it. I want to thank the City of Minot for allowing us to use their space. And thank you to all those who were online and watching and listening. We want to remind you, we do have a second candidate forum set for Thursday, so May 12th. This is the Minot City Council candidates, who will also be at 6 p.m. And then the Minot mayoral candidates are set for May 25th at 6 p.m. And as I mentioned at the very beginning, we are still working on a day and a time that fits for the majority of the Minot school board candidates. So again, thank you for the time, and we'll see you on Thursday.